Mephisto has many servants, worshipful humans, possessed animals, corrupt shadows, cursed objects, but among his favorites, it's the demon known as Bagra Ghul, who erected monuments of suffering in his honor, both in halls of hell and the world above. His first found was a vessel in child-conceived blood altar. His name was Bram Stroud, and he reluctantly did the work prescribed of him for many years until he caught the notice of Project Hellfire. A deal was struck. They wanted Bagra Ghul as a weapon, and Bram wanted to be free of his possession. So they found a new host in Logan, the man known as the Wolverine. And so he became Hellverine, the ultimate killing machine. The spirit of vengeance was the only one capable of stopping him. The demon was sealed away in the monument, marking its own apparent demise. But in fact, Bagra Ghul has been healing, hibernating, waiting to return, afoot in two worlds, and now it is ready to rise again. 1 month ago, in the far north on the shore of Hudson Bay, a container ship docks. It comes from across the Atlantic, and it carries a different sort of commercial loads the people agreed to be stowed away, hoping a better life awaited them. But they have been sold into slavery. Those who survive would have been transported from here to the basements and clubs and massage parlors, except that something finds them first. 3 weeks ago, in upstate New York, there is a small church struggling to survive. So the priest decides to do something about it. During Mass, he laces the communion wine with drugs, creating dependency and wild, ecstatic visions that bring more worshippers every week. Several have died, but several more have been taken their place. And now, the priest's time for a confession has come. Bagra Ghul has risen once more. The Hellverine walks among us. But something is different this time. Resurrection brings change. 2 days ago, they were part of an elite fire team, extensively trained, highly decorated. There was no unit more dangerous or effective in the army, but an ambush put an end to all but one of them, and now their families and the nation mourn. The people leave the funeral in the heavy rain. Later, the army comes back for their fallen comrades. Somewhere in Virginia today, he was easy to find if you knew where to look. Roadside bars that smelled like stale beer and the ghosts of 1,000 cigarettes, ideally with sawdust and peanut shells on the floor for sopping up the blood. The bartender didn't ask if he could help the visitors. They were clearly here on business. They were here for Logan. Deep below the Pentagon is a new facility called the Pentacle. This is the home of Project Hellfire. The fresh dug-up corpses arrive at the facility, and a ill-prepared Dr. Spivey awaits, as Dr. Spivey tells the General that Hellfire energy is still beyond their knowledge. But the General states that they really want those soldiers back, and that she should prepare them for the machine. This lab is devoted to the arsenal of hell. Iron forged with blood of sinners, weapons charged with the screams of the damned, sulfurous bumps, burning chains, poisoned hooks that cause a tortuous pain, right down to the marrow of one's soul. Hellfire as a weapon, and hellfire as a source of energy. As it was asked, so it was done. Today, Virginia. Logan is giving them a hard time until 2 darts manage to hit his neck, incapacitating him and leading to his capture. Yesterday, Project Hellfire. The awakening was a success, but something rubbed them off the wrong way because despite the orders, they attack, killing one of the scientists Scorpion style. After they flee the Hellfire Project, without anyone being able to stop them, with everything enveloped in flames, they escape, crashing into a meeting room where they kill all the attendants. Days ago, outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, some of the servants of hell have a sense beyond smell, sight, or touch. They hear the sound of sin. They taste evil in the air. Such is the case of Bagra Ghul. The demon knows darkness the way a compass knows north. As they are munching off someone, one of them sees something. It seems Hellverine was hungry too and decided to crash the party. This supper club had been meeting once a month for over a decade. They only ate what they hunted, the poor and vulnerable population that no one would miss. Now it was their turn to be hunted. Something had happened when Bagra Ghul bound itself together with Wolverine, a twinning, a warping. Logan was scarred with regret for all the terrible things he had done. He weaponized that guilt. When Logan lashed out, he did so with the repentant spirit. In this same fashion, Bagra Ghul could still bathe in blood and wallow in entrails and delight in pain, while punishing the punishers. Punishers like the ones he sensed now, their darkness stacked up on the horizon like a bank of terrible thunderclouds. Today, Project Hellfire. Logan awakens in a stark, cold room, his wrists tightly bound to metal table. The only light in the room comes from a single bulb hanging above him. Standing in front of him is a stern-faced military officer. The officer asks why didn't he use his powers when he was captured just now, but Logan doesn't seem to know what he is talking about. The officer further explains that a spree of killings have been happening, mentioning all the bad guys that were unlived by Hellverine so far. Logan states that he is not the Hellverine anymore, not since Ghost Rider ripped the demon out of him. He also points out that Bagra Ghul doesn't kill bad guys. Yesterday in the Pentagon, shots are being fired by security guards, but one is caught in flames and the other loses the ability to have a right arm, and the Hellfire team emerges from the building. And before they can do some real damage, Hellverine enters the scene, blazing through the Hellfire team members. A helicopter comes to calm everybody, but it gets pulled to the ground, smashing it in an instant by one of the Hellfire team members. After showing the images to Logan and unlocking his chains, the military asks for Logan's aid against these monsters. Logan's attention go for a piece of the footage that clearly shows a tattoo on the Hellverine, a tattoo that belonged to his son. North Pole in the past, some called him Daken, others called him Fang, but his name was Akihiro, and he was the son of Logan. Because of this, because the blood of the Wolverine ran through his veins, he was not only hunted and killed by Sabretooth, but his body was defiled and torn asunder. Sometimes, hell isn't a place, but a feeling. He died in a dark, cold place, and he was buried in a dark, cold place. The stones and horns kept the bears and wolves from digging him up. The demon sensed Akihiro lying in wait, an empty, willing vessel that matched what the demon recognized as an analog to the Wolverine who had previously been its reluctant host. Akihiro's body was broken, but preserved as though in blue amber, a cryogenic preservation that allowed for the demon resurrection. Bagra Ghul was known by some as the Stitcher, for the way it sewed together its unholy monuments. It unpuzzled the ruin of Akihiro's body, and built him back together. Together in this new hybridized form, they were the Hellverine, a fiery killing instrument that is compelled to punish evil. Washington, D.C., deep below the Pentagon. Logan is shown the Hellfire facilities. They meet with Dr. Spivey. That tells them what she uncovered so far. The sin of the Hellfire team was tough as leather. Their organs turn black, and their blood resembles more like jet fuel. While boasting their creation, Logan recognizes the deeds that were done upon him, and softly reminds them that the only reason they are still speaking is because of his son. Logan sets his mind on the team, since once they attracted his son, they are bound to do it again. And off he goes. But a hellhound will be on his tail from the start. Lieutenant Colonel Leon Townsend is alone, but it doesn't feel like it. Even though everything feels gray right now, the memories of his fellow soldiers still burn bright in his head. And he shouldn't be alive, and they shouldn't be dead. He feels like he's existing somewhere in between, a shadowland. His heart is full of worms, and his guts are choked with grave dirt. He keeps the TV on to distract him from himself. He hasn't been able to concentrate, his thoughts constantly sliding back into the mud of his grief. Until now, near Chesapeake Bay. In so many ways, Akihiro isn't himself. Not quite alive and not quite dead. No longer Fang, but not fully Bagra Ghul. His memories are hiding behind locked doors. He still can't form words in his mouth or mind. But he can feel, and he feels pain. And he feels confusion at the duality that defines him. For now, he hides and he heals, and he waits to be called to fight. He doesn't have to wait long. He targets evil the way a dog scents a hunt. It is a combination of proximity and extremity that sends him into action. A man on board a city bus unzipped his jacket to reveal enough C4 to flatten a block. He demanded to be driven to the White House, but he didn't make it far. The Hellverine was hungry for any and every evil, eager to share his burning punishment. The Secretary and General Harms meet at the Veteran Cemetery. It rains, and she is not happy with the results of the General's performance with the Hellfire project and demands that he fix what he has done. The widow weeps for her fallen husband when she hears her daughter crying. She goes downstairs only to find her fiery, dead husband grabbing her daughter. He asks him to release his daughter and leave them alone, but before he can say no, Logan decapitates him. The headless body still lunges at them, but Logan prevents any harm to the mother and child. They run through the front door only to be met by a hellhound. Logan is distracted by their screams, allowing the Hellfire soldier to attack and burn him. But Logan isn't finished yet and begins cutting into the headless demon. What Wolverine didn't understand at the time was that the soldier, named Peter Marmon, never wanted to hurt his family. He kept a photo of them inside his helmet. They were the first thing he thought of when he woke up, and the last thing he thought of before he fell asleep. He just wanted them back. He wanted his life back. But what used to be could no longer exist, and the destroyers were beginning to understand who was truly to blame for all of this. Later, Logan emerges from the flaming house to find pieces of people and hellhound everywhere, but an intact mother and child clinging to each other. Just as the destroyers were awakening, slowly, so was Akihiro. Dead neurons were sparking again. Synaptic connections were being repaired. He knew his name, even if most of his memories were only half seen, as if glimpsed through a thick fog. Over the past day alone, he had disposed of an assassin, incinerated a nest of vampires, and taken a semi-truck off the road, a trailer full of bodies hanging on hooks. He only wanted to rest, to recover. But there was more work to do, and something ignited inside him. The Hellverine could sense the destroyers as they approached Washington, D.C. in battle formation. General Harms was not always this way. He used to wear his ugliness on the inside. He was the commander of a shadow unit, waging wars that took place outside the media's gaze. In Asia, in South America, in Africa, and the Middle East. What they did was not only unaccountable, but unimaginable. In Eastern Europe, he was said, in some circles, to have put the red in the red, white, and blue. On one mission, he learned that the families of enemy fighters were holed up in an ancient church. They had hung a white flag of surrender at the entrance. He tore it down, and he tore them apart, with no regard for their helplessness or the sacredness of the holy site. There was a holy relic on the altar, as there are in so many churches, the skull of a demon slain by a saint. The bloodshed awakened something ancient and foul. It whispered to his ear. So long he would continue to carry out sacrifices in Hell's name. Harms would live. He would be loyal to Hell first and the U.S. government second. He enlisted and experienced a resurrection of his own. Outside D.C. As Logan watches the house burn, he tells them there is more work for him. But before he leaves, the widow quickly provides him with a sweet ride. And so, Logan sets off in search of his son, General Harms's office. For what happened at that church, he was supposed to face a war tribunal, but the Secretary of State gave him a second chance. Project Hellfire needed a new director. If he could revive the program and get results quickly, he might keep his standing and his pension. If he couldn't get his destroyers in line, he was finished. So he would solve this problem by fighting Hellfire with Hellfire. Lieutenant Townsend is demanding answers at gunpoint when the general walks in to assure him that everything is just fine. Townsend asks to be taken to Project Hellfire to help command his fellow comrades, and his request is accepted. The general welcomes him to Project Hellfire. Akihiro had come from darkness, and now he was consumed by light, the blazing light of hell itself. There was Akihiro, and there was Bagra Ghul, and together they were the Hellverine. With every passing hour, he became more aware of his rebirth and what he had become. He gripped the handlebars, but he didn't control their direction. Not yet. Maybe never. He felt as if he were wandering through a big, black house, trying to find his way out. He was driven to live, but the Hellverine was driven only to punish. The destroyers were out there, and he would find them. But until they made their next move, Hellverine's sense of them remained diffuse. So he found a high vantage point, where he could wait, like an antenna tuned in to the frequency of evil. Here he waits, idling. Somewhere, the Secretary of State meets with General Harms once more. It seems things are getting out of hand, but the President really wants Project Hellfire to be successful. So, one more chance is given for Harms to get it right. He claims that now they have their leader, and everything should work out. Suddenly, they are ambushed by the destroyers. They almost manage to escape, but the chains of the destroyers are stronger than the car's engine, and they are now at the demon's mercy. A piece of the Secretary's face is bitten off, and the general tries to hightail it out of there. But again, those chains prevent his escape. But so many bad vibes couldn't go unheard, and Hellverine came, just as he had in the past. Violence, pain, horror, and fear. They give off a kind of dark frequency that the Hellverine was attuned to. His engine shook the air, sounding like a mouthful of screams and grinding scythes. The destroyers could neither outrun nor outmatch him. In the chest of every destroyer was a power cell fueled by Hellfire. This was their beginning, and their end. Among the many weapons Dr. Spivey had forged for Harms was a rifle loaded with holy water ammo. He didn't know if it would work, but the last of his destroyers was on the move, and Hellverine was about to give chase, so he had to act fast. The high-pitched scream that Hellverine unleashed made dogs bark and children cry in their sleep up to 50 miles away. Someone else heard it, someone who had been sniffing the air, tracking the smell of sulfur. Wolverine. Before him was the son he had lost, and now seemed in danger of losing again. At Logan's touch, something sparked inside of Daken, the demon Bagra Ghul. Here was its original host and source of power. He wanted to plug back into Logan, and he allowed it, like a father wishing he could absorb the fever of his child, wanting to make their pain his own. But instead of helping Akihiro, he doomed him, for the only thing keeping his son alive was the fuel of the demon. Sometimes death calls to us when our bodies and minds are sick or injured, when the world proves itself too cruel to abide. Curling up in a ball and dying would be easier. Some say that to survive all the ugliness, courage is required, but curiosity is a better word. What will your life look like now? You must ask. Now that this pain has made everything different, Lieutenant Townsend wastes no time. Without the demon, Akihiro could not survive. His body succumbed to decay. Logan had allowed this transfer of possession in hopes of saving his son, but he had failed Daken so many times before. For a moment, he thought it might be better for his son to die than to live with this curse. but with the demonic energy of Bagra Ghul circulating through him, he saw, felt, and knew things that did not belong to him, and understood that something had shifted. The demon hadn't been tamed, but it had been altered by its hybridization with Wolverine. The compulsion was still there, to cut, to hack, to kill, but it was now reserved for those who trafficked in evil. In a way, this was not unlike what Logan himself had struggled with his whole life. Wolverine knew how hard it was to cage the beast inside, and it seemed Bagra Ghul had taken this lesson to heart. It was still a curse, but one Akihiro could live with. General Harms barges in with the secretary in his arms and orders Dr. Spivey to reanimate her with the Hellfire machine. He is dead set on having Hell's influence in the government. At dinner, father and son share a long meal as Logan tells Akihiro that it's not worth the trouble there and that they should leave. However, Akihiro feels disappointed that Logan does not share the same sentiment, and now he is even more determined to face the US military head on. Akihiro takes the lead and warns Logan that someone more powerful has entered the scene. It was Townsend's job to know his soldiers, and he knew that Corporal Jamie Doden lived and breathed baseball. He packed a ball with him everywhere, even into the hairiest of battlefields. He called it his lucky charm, a home run he caught bare-handed at a Nationals game. He loved the slow poetry of the game more than anything, and would fall asleep listening to old broadcasts. If he was scared, this is where he would go. Not everything had gone according to plan, but chaos is its own weapon. General Harms listened to the whispers that came off the demon's skull, the greedy, dark whispers that told him what to do next. He had plans for the Secretary of State. Project Hellfire had been formed to harness the power and technology of the underworld. But demonic forces are unstable and predatory by their very nature. Once Hell got a taste of power, it wanted more, and it wanted all. If a demon could possess a body, then why not a country? Hellverine had sensed a greater evil steering the destroyers, an evil that would focus its attention on the quiet power hidden in marbled halls. Laws would lead to strife within the country. Declarations would lead to war without. Logan crushed the head of the secretary with his bike, and now it was Harms's turn to face Hellverine, who did not bow to the powers of Hell. Logan assured Akihiro that he had his back. When the lieutenant arrived and restrained a surprised General Harms, who thought they were on his side, he was wrong. Hellverine ended up delivering the general's final blow. Later, at the Hellfire Project, Logan suggested destroying the place, but Akihiro thought ahead and asked the remaining Hellfire team to be in charge. They, above all, knew the dangers of the facility, and they agreed. Logan is on the road with Akihiro and asks where they go next. Akihiro says that he needs to figure it out alone. Hellverine will return.